Well, welcome back, folks. Today is another episode of the Drew Sutton Leadership Show. We have a special guest here for you. This is Logan Jones. Now, Logan Jones and I go way back. We met when he first started college. It was my first startup weekend here in town. We just hit it off super well, and I've had the great privilege of watching him grow, I think, over the last 8 or 9 years here.
It's been a while.
We're going to talk. Yeah, it's been a while. We're going to talk about middle tech here. This is an expert show, and in the expert show, we're going to be reading a case study, and then we're going to get Logan's advice on it. But first, a word from our sponsors. We have the Black Investing Box. If you want your kids to have a better relationship with money than you did, check out the Black Investing Box at theblackinvestingbox.com. And Drew Sutton Leadership, your business is like an airplane. If you're tired of the turbulence, you're ready to reach that next level, come give us a call. We'll make you a customized flight plan. All right, Logan. Well, welcome to the show. I kind of gave you a little bit of an intro already. This is old hat for you, though. You have been doing middle tech for quite some time. Why don't you tell us what got you into the startup scene while I stall and try to find your bio? Sorry.
Yeah.
I had it pulled up and I've lost it.
No, absolutely. Yeah, this is fun to be on the other side of it. I'm typically the one playing your role, hosting the conversation. So being a guest is a little bit new to me, but excited to be joining you, Drew. Like Drew said, we go way back 8 or 9 years. Drew was one of the first mentors that I had kind of coming into the business ecosystem here in Lexington, and very grateful for the guidance that he gave me at that time of my life. But yeah, getting into the startup ecosystem was kind of quite a journey for me. I kind of view it as a branch in my life. So, I was coming to college. I really didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I signed up for this thing called a living learning program, where you essentially live with people who are interested in the same things that you are. My dad encouraged me to go into the entrepreneurship one just because I was one of those kids that always had a lemonade stand or a yard sale or some rinky-dink little business, and all the way from elementary school into high school. So that living learning program, one of the first classes that I had was with Brian Rainey. He was an adjunct professor of the entrepreneurship program there. And Brian and I just kind of immediately hit it off. He was just my type of guy. You've known me for a while. You know that I like being adventurous. Brian's very adventurous and kind of has that entrepreneurial spirit to him. And the kind of the main point that really was the branch that split my life into a different direction is Brian invited the entire class at UK to the Entrepreneur Hall of Fame. This was right when they were starting it up. And me and my closest friend in that class were the only two people that took him up on the invite to go to the Entrepreneur Hall of Fame. And he set me at a table with some other people that I should not have been sitting at the table with. And I think it just Brian was like, okay, this kid's willing to get out of his comfort zone and come to an event without really knowing anybody there. And so Brian and I became very close because of that. So I'll pause there for a second. That was my first dipping my toe into the startup ecosystem. Everything kind of dominoes from there, but that's where I view that first branch.
Yeah, no, I love that though. You have a bonus nugget of wisdom here for us. Can you tell us what this is about? Because you kind of just talked about it, but this is the first time our audience is going to grab it. So let's get your thoughts here.
Yeah, this is just a saying that I say to myself a lot when trying to get out of my comfort zone or trying to face fear. And that is just, I'm most comfortable when I'm slightly uncomfortable. And so really what this means to me is if I'm not kind of striving for something, trying to grow in some way or stretch myself in some way, I get anxious because of that. If I start feeling stagnant, and that kind of flows through all different parts of my life, whether it's my professional life and trying to really strive and grow and figure out what that next thing is for my career, but also in my personal life. So just trying to improve who I am as a man and become a better person. I view that as kind of a core truth to who I am, making sure that I'm constantly pushing myself and being slightly uncomfortable. And I view that as kind of the sweet spot.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I most appreciated about you. I mean, when we started working together, you were working a social media app to tag physical locations and to try to drive sales via social media, which is funny because of the course you took later. It's always been kind of in the sales genre and in the tech genre. Before we talk about that, let's find out a little bit more about Logan. Logan is the co-host and partner of Middle Tech. Logan Jones has dedicated over 5 years to spotlighting startup entrepreneurship and technology in the region. Through Middle Tech, Logan has interviewed over 250 entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, and business owners, significantly contributing to the visibility of local innovation. In addition to his work at Middle Tech, Logan was the fifth, not at 5, the fifth employee at Sales River, a Series A startup serving prominent clients Humana, Life, and currently Logan is the strategic partnership team at Fooji, where he helps major brands like Disney, Netflix, and Amazon. That's right, Little Kentucky. Mr. Jones is helping Disney, Netflix, and Amazon bridge the gap between social media and the real world. It's helped creating meaningful customer engagement. Now, Logan has been a star ever since I've known him. In fact, I just hope he remembers me. He reaches that next level. He's deeply passionate about fostering growth with his home state's innovation economy. Welcome, Logan Jones.
That's beautiful. Love the music playing with that too.
Yeah,
added to the effect.
Good. Okay, so let's talk about all the work that you've been doing. So you've had a couple of startups. I think that the audience here, some of them are corporate, some of them are small business, some of them would like to be startup. So you used the magic word in there, Series A. So talk to me about your experience with startup culture and how that's different than just regular small business or bootstrapping, and what Series A means.
Yeah. So I guess just to start off with Series A, that's probably the best place to start with that question. Series A is just the round of capital that we had raised. So we took on some venture capital. We raised, I believe, just under $4 million. From a firm out of LA called Mucker Capital. So that was just a stage of funding that the business was in. Like Drew said, I got to join as the fifth employee there. So talking about culture, and really it's kind of ironic, or maybe not ironic, but just funny. I've only ever worked at startups. So my perspective on culture is definitely skewed to what it's like to work at a startup. And as far as, Sales River / Leadrilla, we had kind of a rebrand in the middle there that I can get into later. The culture at a startup is it's awesome. It's awesome is the best word that you can use to describe it. And the reason I say it's awesome is because for me, when I came on as the fifth employee at Sales River, so I came on right when COVID hit. So I almost got my offer rescinded when COVID hit, because the revenue of the company just plummeted when the world kind of shut down. Everyone was just so much uncertainty. But I bring that up because I joined during a very uncertain time when everyone was working from home, and we just kind of said, and this is very startup fashion, we just kind of said, screw it, we're going to come into the office anyway, and we need to be together as a team. We want to work out of the office, and there's only 5 of us, so it's not like there's a huge COVID exposure. But not only was that just an awesome experience to work in person with people to build a company during that time, that it also kind of became my social life. It was all consuming in terms of the culture and how it kind of permeated all the different factors of my life. And so just some, I guess, anecdotes about the actual culture and how things played out. It was very much a culture of you wear all the hats. Everyone was doing multiple different things. I was hired on to be an account executive, but I was doing account management. I was doing content creation. I was doing support. I was in the brainstorming sessions around the product because I was talking to all of our customers. So I was giving input to, here's how we should build this feature, and here's how we should architect this backend. So that was literally everybody at the company. Everyone was playing all those different roles. And it was one of those things where it's we're such a small company that you don't have a choice other than to do that. And it leads to this culture of, we're going to figure it out no matter what. Everyone just kind of has this, whether it's a misplaced sort of belief that we're going to be, this super valuable $100 million company, and we're going to be able to figure our way out to that point. But that's what the culture was like. We truly believed that we were going to build the company into something like that. And that's just kind of how it all played out from there. I think you're muted, Drew. Can't hear your mic anymore.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about startups, and why I always keep a foot in that startup world is 2 reasons. One is the all-encompassing nature of it. When you go to work at a corporate world, you go to work with coworkers. But when you go to work at a startup, it's a family because you guys are all in and everybody's success is banking on that next step.
Yep.
And there's an amazing camaraderie, I think. What was your favorite? What do you have a favorite memory from that time?
Gosh, yeah, there's a lot of favorite memories. I'll do like a favorite memory of us actually like doing what we were supposed to be doing and working, and then I'll do a favorite memory or a few favorite memories of us just like having fun together and being kind of a typical. I mean, we were all a bunch of 20 somethings, like literally we were all in our 20s and we had stumbled upon this idea that kind of worked. So we had a lot of fun with it too. My favorite memory that was work related, and we can talk about this more a little bit, but you in the intro, in my bio, we mentioned that Sales River worked with Humana,
Oh yeah.
and that was a result of COVID. COVID changed the world in a lot of ways, and it changed how big businesses operated. And one thing led to another. The dominoes kind of fell in a way that Humana came to us to work with us, and they gave us at the time a pretty significant chunk of cash to come and work with us. And just one of my favorite memories that was like work related and like really cool stuff happening at the company is when that money came in and we were all like, oh my God, like we're rich. Like this is it. Like this is when we take off. And
Yeah.
I'll relate that to some of the other like not so work oriented stories that are some of my favorite stories. We would have this metrics dashboard on the platform that would show how much money was being spent within the platform, how much revenue we had made per day.
Oh, nice.
And we would set these arbitrary metrics where we'd be like, all right, if we make $10,000 for 5 days in a row, we're going to go to Jeff Ruby's on Friday night and we're going to have a good time. And this was when it was like 5 of us. So it wasn't crazy expensive to do that. But we did that a few times. And that was, at the time I was 22, 23, being a young 20 something. And I was like, this is startup utopia. Like it can't get any better than this. Like,
oh, that's awesome.
I kind of knew that it wasn't going to last forever because you eventually scale up and you can't sustain stuff like that. But those were some of my favorite memories of just sharing a dinner with the entire team, having hit some metrics that we had set for ourselves. Yeah, just so much fun. Another thing, one last thing that's a great memory from that company. We had this big office down at the Lexington Square right downtown. And I don't know if you've ever been in there, but a lot of the offices just have these like big glass windows. So you can see right in the office. So anybody that's like walking up and down the hallway can just like see what's going on in there. And again, there's 5 of us in there. We had this giant office and we had basically just like this big empty portion of empty floor in the office. And so we had invented a game using our empty space that was essentially a combination of like tennis and ping pong, or like now you might say it was a combination of like pickleball and ping pong. But we used painter's tape to tape out a court. We used a couch in the middle as the net. And then like we had ping pong paddles and ping pong balls, and we would just play like full court ping pong in our office. And so it was the most ridiculous thing because we'd have people walk by and we'd be like sweating playing this game in our office. Like we'd have 3 people back there on their computers working, and then 2 of us were like dripping sweat playing this game in front of the windows. And we had several people knock on our door and be like, what are you guys doing here? Like you're always doing the most you're either heads down working on your computers or you're playing this weird made up game. So anyway, those are a few of my favorite stories from those early days at Leadrilla.
Man, there's a lot of like, you could never pull that off in corporate America.
No.
And mainly you couldn't pull it off because of the judgment. Like people would be like, well, you need to be, but what I love about that is the balance that you just described, that everybody on the floor was looking at that metric every day. And then the metric led to celebration. But then also you're able to say, hey, look, let's just let off some steam. Let's enjoy each other. Let's have fun. But then let's go heads back down.
Yeah.
And I think that I think there's this, again, this stuffiness, like, the necktie is a little bit too tight in corporate America. And I think that they miss out on a lot because, we're all alive. I used to tell folks when we talk about work-life balance, I would say, well, are you alive at work? And they would say, yes. And I would say, then I don't understand the question. Right. Because, you should, there's time to have fun if you're being serious. Right. And if you're really being serious about it, there's a lot of time to have serious fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, I mean, a startup definitely is going to have more of those moments that are fun just for the sake of being fun than the corporate world will. But I've never worked in a corporate job, but I'm just going to go and make the blanket statement that I think there's always room to have a little bit more fun than what people think is appropriate.
Yeah. Well, okay. So let's roll over to kind of a different question here. As long as I've known you, you have you're just easy to hang out with. Like you have a very chill personality. You're interested, you're curious and stuff. Um, Talk to me about how you develop, because when you're at Sales River, the Humana contract was a large number of zeros, um, and you're very young, and all of a sudden you have this, like you said, we're rich. Tell me how you
Yeah.
develop that relationship, how you move that relationship forward. So, like, just talk to us about how to, not, I mean, ethically, obviously, but like practically speaking, how do you develop a relationship with a strategic partner like that?
Yeah, I think so. My experience, just like specifically with the Humana deal at Leadrilla, then into Sales River, it was kind of my first experience like having a really high stakes professional relationship where there was a big contract on the line and it was my responsibility to do it and to make sure that it goes well. And I think, I mean, to me, I relationship building comes very naturally to me. I'm very, like you kind of said there, I think it was a compliment to me, and it was also, I think, accurate. You said I'm very interested. I think I've really honed my ability to ask good questions. A lot of that came through hosting Middle Tech, doing a podcast, and I think that was kind of the first way that I got really into building a good relationship, at least specifically with the Humana account. Really, and when I say asking good questions, that mostly came along the lines of understanding what my direct contact at Humana really cared about, like understanding their background and understanding their role at the company and understanding what made them look good to their boss, and really like taking the time to ask those questions and have that full understanding so that I can kind of tailor my behavior and my actions around that person. And so I think that was kind of the first thing. And I know we talked a little bit about it, and you also said that the curiosity piece of it. I'm a very naturally curious person, and I'm not afraid to ask those dumb questions too. So like it's not like I'm just knocking it out of the park with all the questions that I asked. I'll also let my curiosity take me into, maybe I should know how this works, but I'm brand new in an industry and I'm going to ask some questions, and having that level of vulnerability naturally will draw people to you as well. So I definitely use my youth as kind of a tool for, like, people are like, oh, you're young and like you're doing cool stuff and we want to see you succeed. And I think the other piece of that there is the vulnerability part of it. And this is probably the one that I utilize the most across both professional and personal relationships. Vulnerability in the professional sense of, if you don't know something, just like admitting you don't know it and saying like, yeah, I'm trying to learn. Obviously a lot easier to do when you're young.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Sorry.
Is that the
So that
rewind?
one more time. If you don't know something, what should you do?
You should just admit you don't know it.
Yes.
It's a groundbreaking thing. But no, I mean, obviously that's a lot easier to do when you're just starting out and you truly like don't know anything. But that should stay with you through your life. You should not be afraid to admit what you don't know. I think the world would be a much simpler place if people were willing to do that.
I totally agree. One of my favorite stories about myself is I was in a meeting and I'd bought ice cream sandwiches for my team. So there's about 15 people in this meeting. That's multiple boxes of ice cream sandwiches, by the way. So I brought them in, and one of the more stuffy folks, she said, "Oh, channeling your internal child." And in all honesty, like I was kind of taken aback by the statement. She wasn't really being mean. I was just like, "No, actually, I channel my external adult most days." Like, but kind of my core of where I stay is with that curiosity, with that desire for fun. Like if there's something to be gained here, what are we playing for?
Hmm.
Um, but you can be professional while all that's playing.
Yeah, I found that, at least my experience interacting with the like corporate America through Humana and through some of these other large clients that we had with Sales River, is like everyone has that urge to be having fun and to not be so serious all the time. And so it was also the settings that I was interacting with them in. Like it was typically we were out at dinners with them, or like with Humana, they would take us to Thurby in Louisville before the Derby, and they had a box. We were usually with them in fun settings, but like all those people are just normal people, and like if you just get to know them and ask the questions, and you share some vulnerability with them, whether it's something you don't know or whether it's just like, I don't
Yeah.
know, stories. Tell them stories and be vulnerable with your stories. Like that is immediately will draw people to you if you
I
utilize
was in
those
a
things.
hiring conversation with one of my clients, and there was a candidate, and the candidate was technically right on the money. Like they had all the experience we needed, they had all the skills, they had a laid out 5-year plan. There is an executive sort of a position, like a senior VP sort of a position. And one of the folks finally piped up in the meeting and they said, "But can you imagine going out to dinner with this guy?" Like, because he was just like too stuffy and a little bit arrogant. Like, not like you have to have a, I don't know, you have to have an edge of like, we're going to go make it happen. That's not what I'm, he just like, he was the smartest guy in the room. And the reason that they passed on him was not because he wasn't he didn't have the skills. He had the skills, clearly had the skills and the experience and the plan. He didn't have the personality. Like people didn't want to spend time with him. And when you're doing either a startup in which everybody's kind of is senior management, like you were number 5, right? Or if you're in a corporate scenario where you have senior management, this person becomes part of your family. You're spending a lot of time outside of work with them, and they really need to be somebody you enjoy.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, that's that's something that I think a lot about, of how can I be somebody that's enjoyable to be around. I think a lot of that I get from my dad. My dad is very similar to me, somebody that's just very easygoing, and I think I picked a lot of that up from him. But I've never been like the funniest guy in the room, and I've never really, like, I had a lot of social anxiety growing up. So I feel like at 27 now, I'm just now kind of coming into being confident in my abilities to build relationships and to be like a good vibe to be around, is kind of how I would describe it. And I think a lot of that is just kind of like active listening and communication. I think are some other traits that I've found I've gotten good at, mainly through doing a podcast.
So we're going to jump into the case study here, and you're going to kind of break it down how you would do it. But before we jump there, so you are strategic. You're at Fooji now. So how is Fooji different? I'm not asking for any of the dirt, none of the tea. My daughter came to me and she's like, "I need to spill the tea, Dad." And I was literally, I didn't know what that. I was like, "Do I need to make tea? Like, I will spill the tea with you." I don't know. Are we making a map on a piece of? I don't understand what we're doing. Anyway, so I'm not asking you to spill the tea, but how is Sales River and Fooji different? Because they were both started about the similar time, but so they're both more mature companies now. How was the experience at Fooji different? And then if you had a new Logan just join Fooji underneath you, what advice would you give to that new Logan?
That's a great one. So Fooji, how is Fooji different? Pretty different companies. Sales River was in the healthcare sales space, like insurance sales space, and data collection around the sales process. Fooji is more of an experiential marketing software, is it probably the best way to describe it at the highest level. And the easiest way to understand what we do is usually through an example. So I'd kind of put it in the introduction that I sent over to you, but essentially what Fooji is doing is bridging the gap between social media and the real world. And we're doing that by putting typically some sort of physical product in a consumer's hand off the back of a social media action, call to action of some sort. And so to give you an example to help you kind of understand fully how the company operates, let's say, so I mentioned Disney's one of the clients. Let's say Disney's putting out a new Star Wars movie, and they want a lot of people to talk about Star Wars on social media so that more eyeballs get on the fact that Disney's releasing a new Star Wars movie. They would come to Fooji and they'd say, "Hey, we want to make Star Wars go viral. We want to give away lightsabers to help the virality of this." And so what we would do is we have social listening tools set up on our software. So we could say, okay, anybody that tweets hashtag "May the Force be with you," we're going to be able to automatically reply from Disney's handle to that person and say, "Hey, give us your information. We're going to deliver you a lightsaber in under an hour." And then we, on the back end, have an integration with DoorDash to be able to stage, whether it's lightsabers or food or whatever the product is. We stage that with DoorDash, and then anytime somebody puts their information in, immediately it triggers a delivery to go to them. And then 45 minutes later, they got a lightsaber. Like, "This is the coolest thing ever. I'm going to take a picture of this and tweet about it and talk about the experience of I posted about it. Now an hour later, I have the product." So there's a bunch of different ways that you can use that software, but that's kind of the gist of what the software does and what the company does. We basically just use that software to do like pretty crazy experiential marketing stuff by delivering some sort of product or experience off the back of a social media call to action.
That's fantastic.
What
is the minimum company size? So like we're in Lexington, right? The listenership here is wider. If somebody wanted to contact you, what would be the best way to contact you? And like, what is your company like? What is the minimum requirement really that you'd be interested in?
Yeah. They can contact me at Logan at Fooji.com. That's FOOJI.com. The minimum company requirement, I mean, the contract size to work with us is fairly high. So we're typically working with larger businesses, businesses that typically have multi-million dollar marketing budgets, for the most part. So yeah, I don't know if I should be disclosing how much the
No, no,
subscription
yeah,
costs
yeah,
on
yeah, yeah.
here, so I'm not going to do that. But yeah, it's I would say typically companies with a head count of over 100 people, just to like try and quantify the size of company that typically works with us.
Yeah.
And it's typically like a consumer facing brand. So whether it's like a CPG company or a film studio or those are kind of the main two, like food products and movies, media, video games, stuff like that. Those are typically the companies
No,
that we're
that's
working with.
awesome. So you're creating that wow experience
Yeah. Yeah.
at scale for
Correct.
those larger companies. I think that's super cool.
Yep.
All right.
That's a good way to think of it.
So with that, read our scenario here. That's a little bit loud. I'm gonna have to. Oh no! Now I lost my script. Okay, so we have a tech startup. This one is Health Innovate, which has developed an AI-driven app designed to improve patient management for small and medium-sized clinics. The app uses machine learning to predict patient loads, management appointments, optimize clinic operations. The startup has seen some initial success and is now at a crucial juncture where scaling effectively is vital for long-term viability. So my question to you here, Logan, is um, what does the leadership team need to do to energize their employee base and maybe build new relationships so that they can scale, so they have the cash to do that scaling with?
Yeah, I think the first thing that a leadership team needs to really nail is sales, kind of broadly, and I'm going to break that into two categories here. The sales, the two sales roles that a founder and a leadership team are going to take are going to be the obvious one, which is like selling it to the customer, but the non-obvious one is selling it to the team, like selling the vision to the team and selling where the company can kind of go to the team. And I think something that our founder Kobe Hastings did really well at the startup that I was at is when he was selling the vision to us, he was doing it from like a first principles approach. And I think that's like I think that's the approach to do it, to get your team to really buy in at kind of like a core level, to like take the problem that you're solving, break it down to first principles approach and say, okay, we're solving this problem in this way because if you take a first principles approach, this is the best way to solve it. And I truly believe that in my soul as the founder. Selling that to the team and really getting their buy-in from that is crucial from kind of day one until you're scaling up to become a major company, and equipping your team to have that story and be able to repeat that story to other employees, I think is a very important part of that as well. So I think that's one essential part of it. Another essential part is founder-led sales. So I mentioned there's kind of two sales activities here. When I say founder-led sales, like the founder should be on basically all the sales calls for most of the growth of the company until you're to the point where it's like, you have a repeatable sales motion and you can start to hire leadership specifically in sales. The founder should be on those sales calls, pitching his vision alongside, an early sales hire, which was kind of the approach that we took at Sales River. As far as building the relationships and strategy for that, I mean, the most tangible thing that I can say is going and building those relationships in person. And we did that through conferences. So I think some of the best money that we spent as a startup is we just started hitting conferences extremely hard, and we got a really nice booth at these conferences. So there's a little bit of a wow factor when you saw our booth and you saw what we were doing at these conferences. And that paid off massively for us because the industry that we were in was super well connected. And I get the sense that most professional industries typically are, like, there's kind of that core community. Figure out a way to get into that community, figure out ways to get to dinner with those people, figure out ways to get in person with them and build those relationships. And you'll just be shocked at the number of partnerships that can pop up, how helpful people can be with introducing you to new clients, new partners for your business, all sorts of stuff. That's how it essentially went with Sales River. And based off the scenario you read there, those would be a few of the things that I would recommend. Um, is that is that what you're looking for with that section? Is there anything else I can elaborate on there?
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I love that there's a couple of things that I super enjoyed. One is, you talked about sales, and the implication of sales is that a company runs on cash, right? You have to have the cash, whether you're a startup or a bootstrap. If you don't have cash coming in that's greater than your expenses, then you're just a hobby. And eventually either that hobby has to be funded externally or that hobby has to die, right? And so, amongst all the passion, amongst all the energy, amongst all the relationships, is sales. Sales is a core function of business. And the lead, and then I actually I wasn't expecting this one from you, but that the founder should be on all sales calls. Like, as a founder, it is your job to do the selling, because Simon Sinek says people don't buy what you sell; they buy why you sell it. And there's nobody that can carry why better than the founder can.
Yep.
Um, and you also, I mean, I loved it. You were saying that the first thing to nail is sales, both internal and external. So internally, you got to explain why are we doing this, and then externally, um, did you have any aha moments where the leader came down to you and was like, "Hey, we got to go do this," and internally you're like, "I don't think that's what I want to do," or "Why are we doing that?" And then like his first principles really helped you catch a fire for it.
Yeah. Yeah, this is something that we could probably dig into a lot of different directions. So I'm going to try and position it from the best point. You know, I came into that industry knowing basically nothing about insurance sales, or how that industry really functioned, any of the dynamics there. And so it took a lot to kind of get me up to speed on, just from a knowledge perspective, on how everything kind of worked. And
Yeah,
so Kobe did a great job of kind of taking the information that I was taking in from sales calls and from these account management calls, and like understanding the people that we were serving as customers, connecting that to the reason they're experiencing these problems, the reason that that problem has led them to try our platform, and the reason that our platform is built in the way that it is to solve that problem is XYZ. And he would go into like this, he would give me this very, 30,000 foot view of, this is the industry, here are the problems with it, here are the problems that we're solving within that industry. And he would give me this very like kind of holistic sort of um, understanding of the industry. And so by the time that I left that company, my my knowledge about the industry and my knowledge about how our product fit into that industry was vast, is how I would describe it. And so I think Kobe just did a great job of understanding that our product did not exist in a vacuum within the industry. Like it fit in with all the different dynamics that any sort of industry has. And so he did a great job of making sure that myself, as well as other parts of the team, were able to kind of see the bigger picture and where we fit into that. And then also, like, when it came time to build new features or to make little mini pivots here and there, that made it a lot easier to be like, okay, you have this understanding of the overall industry, we're going to take this direction because of this thing. So like, you had to kind of have that overall context and understanding. And I think that was one of the things that Kobe did extremely well at that company.
no, I like that. I like it because it's a great story of a good mentor spending the time
Mm-hmm.
with the team to make sure that they got it. I actually used to say all the time, if you don't feel useless 2 or 3 times a day, then you're not doing a great job leading,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you shouldn't be doing it. There shouldn't be a moment where everybody's like, "Oh, I need his help." Like, that moment when they're like, "Oh, I must reach out for the Messiah." That moment is not an appropriate moment for you. There is a scenario that's okay, but not at the workplace. Your job should be developing the team, and then they should be super capable. So then you can plan and build on that, and then you can bring more people in, and it's a you're building that foundation to be so solid.
Yep.
Um, the reason that he needed to do that, and the reason that that's harder to do, is how young you were when you started. I mean, you were
Yep.
just out of. Were you still in college, or were you just out of college when you started?
Just out of college. Yeah. I think I was 22 or 23. That was 2020. So yeah, we'll say 23. Pretty sure 23.
So were there any, if you look at starting a startup of your own someday, or starting a new product within an organization, would you hire that young, or were you a outlier? Obviously, you are an outlier, but you know what? can you hire young and expect that sort of performance? If so, what are the enablers? Like what's the magic that makes that work? Um, and what's the characteristics of the person that you're looking for?
Yeah. I think I'm going to tie kind of the characteristics part into the answer itself. And I think yes, you can hire that young if that person has agency and is like a go and make it happen for themselves type of person. Like I don't know if I would necessarily want to hire super young and inexperienced if I just put out a regular job posting and then a bunch of young people apply for it and then I go through like a standard interview process with those young people. I don't think that necessarily, like you can still find some gold nuggets doing that, but you're less likely to. Like you're going to end up most likely with somebody fresh out of college that has never had any work experience and is that's just going to be a tough role for them to fit into. I think what was different about how I ended up at that company is it came because I was out, like I was in the arena is the best way to describe it. Like I met Kobe because we interviewed him on the podcast and he got to interact with me and understand that like I was out doing real things in the real world and was a good communicator and would probably make a good sales hire. And then, I had kind of taken it upon myself because he was talking about how his company was scaling and they were going to be looking for people soon. And I immediately was like, I'll, I would love to work for you. Like that would be sweet. And so I like very much took it upon myself to create the opportunity. And so I think that hiring young people can work if it's approached in that way. I wish more young people realized that they could do that. Like they can create opportunities for themselves. I think there's some sort of quote that I've heard somewhere and it's like the best jobs are not the ones that are posted on websites or like Indeed or anything like that. Like it's the jobs that you find through the relationships that you built and you know you create the opportunities for yourself. And so yeah, that's kind of where I'll leave that answer is hiring young can definitely work, but like you have to allow the young people to self-select. You know what I mean? Like they have to be going out and like making it happen for themselves is my opinion.
No, I love that because that's part of your story you told at the beginning, right? Is you joined a program in college, you met some mentors, you met Brian Rainey. Brian drug you out of your comfort zone, and that's like that self-selecting process. This is one of I have this conversation a lot. Every employee says, "Oh, I want to be paid more." Every single employee. I was an employee at a large corporation. You always want a promotion every year. You're always the hardest working. But there's an interesting study that says 75% of the people think that they're better than average at driving, right? But average would mean that you're 50%. Like it's impossible for 75% of the people to be better than average. Like that's not the way average works.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but we also feel that way about our income is oh well, I should be in charge of that project or I should be paid more. And so the way I would address that as a lead is I would say, before the question was raised, I would say, hey, let's talk about how to make more money. And everybody's like, what? Like I'd have a room of about 20 or 30 people. And I would say, how did you guys get the current pay that you're getting? And inevitably some, courageous soul would be like I have a degree in experience. Be like, ding, ding. Like you, before you got paid, went out and did the work. And that is why I thought you were valuable enough. And that's why we pay you what we're paying you. And negotiations gets in there too. But it's a self-selection process. You're always doing the job that you're about to get paid for. Like no, and then the more you manage people, the more you realize you can't pay people to be good workers. Um, if somebody will say, well, if you gave me, I don't know, $5 more an hour, then I would do this extra task. No, you wouldn't. You're not doing it now. I don't know. I've paid people five more. I fought for them and they didn't do it later. So as a leader, finding those people that are at a young age pushing, they don't have to have figured it out, but they're pushing, they're doing the right actions. That's how you find people. I totally agree. But
Yeah.
so talking about right actions, you beat me to the podcasting game. In fact, I very specifically remember a conversation in which you'd done about 6 months of podcasting. And I was like, you're going to have to turn this into a cash flowing scenario somehow. Otherwise you're going to lose interest. And you rightly so. And so I'm admitting defeat here. You're like, no, we're in this for the long haul. So talk to me about your podcasting career, why you got into it, how you proved me wrong, all the above. I'm impressed.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for the question. It's something I'm very proud of. I'm very proud of what we've got in Middle Tech too. And I do love talking about it. It's definitely one of my passions and it is a side thing. Like we've mentioned, my full-time job is at Fooji right now. So Middle Tech is, I just do it on the side and I do it for free. Um, none of the partners pay themselves currently. Hopefully that'll change, and we'll get to that. But yeah, my favorite story to tell, another kind of branch moment in my story, was also thanks to the entrepreneurship program at UK. I was in this class. Doyle Friskney was the professor, and rather than teach the actual class, all he would do is bring in local entrepreneurs and people in the entrepreneur ecosystem to the class, and basically just let them give a presentation about what they were doing and like their learnings from it. It was an awesome class. Loved that class because you got to interact with real entrepreneurs and hear their stories. And to me, like, it was like, oh, like I'm getting to attend TED Talks and hear from celebrities. Like, this is the best thing ever. And so one day, Evan Knowles walks into this class, and for those of you who don't know Evan Knowles, he's an interesting guy, more quiet and reserved. He at the time, I believe, was 21 or 22. He's only a year older than me, so I'm probably a junior or senior in college at this point. Let's call it a junior. He walks into this class and starts giving a presentation on Fooji. So Evan was the first employee at Fooji, the company I'm working at now. It's a very full circle thing that we're about to go through here. So he's giving this presentation about Fooji. You know, he's 20, I think he's 22. He dropped out of college to help build this company, to be the first employee there. They'd sent him out to open an office in LA. You know, he's making really good money at his age. Fooji was working with these giant brands, like I just kind of talked about, and he was their first sales hire. He was running the sales team over there. And I remember sitting in that class and just being like, damn, like that is what I want to do. Like that is the perfect path. Cause I still didn't really have the experience to go and be an entrepreneur myself. Like I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but it just kind of clicked with me listening to him talk. Like, that's perfect. Like I'll go and be an early employee at a startup, and I'll learn from somebody that has more experience than me. And then I'll kind of feel a little bit more equipped to go and start a company. So anyway, he told his story. It really resonated with me. He leaves the class. We have to stick around, and the professor is talking about whatever. And I'm like giddy to get out of that class. And so as soon as they let us out, I sprint out of the building and go and physically chase Evan down on campus. And I catch up to him, and I'm just like, man, that like, I really loved what you were talking about there. And I would love to learn how you did what you did. And can we just be friends? And so that's how Evan and I met. I literally just chased him down. And I was like, can we be friends? I want to learn from you. And,
so I love so much about that story, because as we've already talked about so many times, you're a relationship person primarily.
Yeah.
Like that is your core, like Loganism, Loganness, right? And then you're also a chaser. Like you're like, man, this is what I want, and then you go and get it. It's like, physically, those character traits are being worked out in this story. This is cracking me up.
Yeah. And so Evan was awesome. He was like, yeah, man, let's grab lunch. And that small action that I took there just blossomed into such an awesome friendship and business relationship. And so to continue on with the story, and a quick funny anecdote. So I became obsessed with Fooji, because Fooji was like the first major startup in Lexington that was really crushing it that I knew about. Evan was working there. I think at the time they were up to like 30 some people. This was right before they really like hit a growth point. And so they started advertising for internships. And so, of course, I'm like, I've got to have an internship at Fooji. Like, I will mop the floors. I will do whatever it takes. And so my personality, rather than just like honing in on exactly the internship that I felt like I was most equipped for, I just applied for like every internship, like literally every single internship. And so the week they were hiring for these, I was in there like 5 times. And as the story goes, I don't know how true this is, but apparently the founder was like, what's this dude's problem? Like, why is he here so much? This is weird. And so I didn't get any of the internships, and I was crushed after that. And so anyway, that's an anecdote. It ended up being a great kind of full circle moment. I ended up getting recruited to come onto that company where I am now. But because I didn't get the internship there, I ended up being Brian Rainey's personal assistant at Awesome Inc., which worked out great for me. So I'm getting a little long-winded here. I'll get back to middle tech.
No, actually, I want to riff off of that for just a second.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of big disappointments in my life where things that my jobs have not gone that, sometimes it was strategic. Sometimes it was just circumstances. Sometimes I was making mistakes, and those can be crushing. But when you're out there hustling and building relationships, part of that story is, good things come to good people, sort of a narrative. But the real underlying story is that you had built these relationships, And even though you were targeting this thing, then this other relationship said, "Oh no, we'll make room to catch Logan because we know that it's just a moment in his life." And then you continue to hustle. So, like, I think that the real lesson, they call it productive. Well, it's probably not productive paranoia. The idea is that you're digging the well before you really need it, right? You're building those relationships,
Yep.
and the catch was not because you scrambled; it's because of the relationship you already had.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's a great way to look at it. And yeah, that is essentially that's how I ended up working at Awesome Inc. So it started off as Brian's personal assistant. I did everything from helping out with random stuff at work. I think I built like a founder directory of all the founders in Lexington. I got to go around and build profiles on all of them and meet with them, which was a really cool little project for me. And I would do everything from that to like picking up his laundry. Like there's nothing I wouldn't do. I was just, I was one of those guys that was like, don't care. You're paying me. I want to prove myself to you. Like I'm going to do it all. And so Brian and I developed a really cool relationship through that. I graduated with that job still. And then he was like, I'm going to hire you on as a project coordinator at Awesome Inc. So I actually worked at Awesome Inc. full time for, I think like 6 months after I graduated, before I landed at Lead Rilla.
Yep.
But to get back into the Middle Tech story. So now Evan Knowles and I, we've become friends. We're hanging out a good bit. We're seeing each other at Awesome Inc. and everything. And I start seeing him posting on his LinkedIn and on his Instagram, this Middle Tech podcast, and he's interviewing local founders. And I'm like, that is the coolest thing I've ever freaking seen. Like I'm immediately bought into this. And so I'm just a fan to begin with. I'm DMing him like, super cool, man. Like love what you're doing. Big fan, big supporter, listening to every episode, just being as encouraging and supportive as I could. And really doing that without having any expectation of like, I want to join the podcast. I was genuinely just a fan of it. And I can remember Evan and I were hanging out at Awesome Inc. for some event, and we were talking about stuff, and he's like, yeah, we'd really love to have somebody help out with social media stuff, creating social media content at Middle Tech. And kind of in the same way that I said yes to going to Brian's event, I was like, I can help with that. Like I actually had a design minor, which is another tangent. But I got this minor at UK to do graphic design. And so I was like, I know I have these tools. I know how to use them. Like, I'll help you create some social media content. So that was my step. That was how I got involved in Middle Tech. This was like 6 months after they had launched the podcast, him and Nate Antetomaso. And so I started off just like creating social media content for him and just generally contributing in kind of any way that I could, like I had done at some of the other companies I've been with. And so started off creating social media content, got it to a point where like our social channels didn't look desolate. Like it actually looked like somebody was putting some effort into them. And so then we started growing on social media. We were gaining followers at a decent clip. Nothing crazy. I mean, it was a local podcast, but was really proud of that. And then I was like, man, our social media content would be a lot better if our podcast content was higher quality. Cause we were recording this damn podcast with a single snowball mic in the middle of the table. And then there were people like way all the way back here talking to it. And so it just sounded terrible. And we didn't have any video. So I was like, I'm
interrupting here. Sorry for interrupting you there.
No, that's good.
I felt like that was the right spot to put that in. I wish that I'd flipped those two scripts around, because you have like one of the original podcasts in which it's like you guys in a virtual background and you're just kind of doing your thing. And then later, like you really have become a known name, especially here locally, but also in the podcasting world. 250 episodes is a lot of episodes. That's a lot of editing. That's a lot of prepping. That's a lot of traveling and sitting and spending a couple hours with folks. We are kind of running tight on the end of the show here. I'm gonna give you a couple more minutes to wrap up, and then we're gonna close out. All right?
Yeah, for sure. So just to close out kind of what I was saying there, I basically just took it upon myself to learn how to edit podcasts, how to do video. I spent an entire Sunday. I'd dedicate my entire Sunday to editing the podcast and getting it posted. Nate ended up moving to Chicago. I got the tap to become the co-host with Evan. And then I made a pretty good argument that I needed a third of the equity in the company. So I became one of the partners, basically just through like working my ass off to to earn it. And now we're to the point where Middle Tech is a legit media company. We're sponsored by the state of Kentucky through the Cabinet of Economic Development. We've got some really legit, awesome sponsors. We pay employees that do great work. It's turned into a legit company now.
So one of the things that I just want to highlight for the crew here, I realize it's kind of been a longer show, but in all these stories, what we have is you going out and building relationships, and you don't often get paid directly from the relationships that you build, but you're getting these amazing experiences, especially at a young age. You're in front of movers and shakers. They know your name. They're making room for you. Um, even even at Fooji, where people are like, what's this kid doing? Like, people are making room for you, right? And now
Yeah.
you find yourself, you've gotten a lot of skills, you've built a lot of reputation, you've built some equity, legitimate equity. You've gotten to ride the startup curve. Now you're on, I think, your second one now, full curve. Um, that's just cool, man. I am super flattered that you're on the show. Do you have any final thoughts? And I'm going to close this out.
Yeah, I guess final thoughts. I mean, I kind of bring it back to some of the core principles I like living by, and that is what we're talking about, being most comfortable when you're slightly uncomfortable. And I just encourage anybody listening to keep that in mind, both in your personal life and your professional life.
All right. Well, there's Logan Jones. Be most comfortable when you're slightly uncomfortable. Keep pushing it. With that, thank you all for staying tuned. We are out. Oh dear. I always forget.